When Michael Jordan arrived at the airport that Tuesday morning, he was just a man trying to catch a flight. Dressed in a simple tracksuit and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, he blended in with the river of travelers flowing through the busy terminal. He wasn't looking for attention or special treatment. He just wanted to get to his destination, a charity golf tournament he had promised to attend. He checked his single bag, went through security with a quiet nod to the officers who recognized him, and made his way toward the gate. He was flying first class, a small comfort he allowed himself after decades of a life lived in the public eye. The quiet space at the front of the plane was one of the few places he could truly be anonymous for a few hours. He found his gate and saw the flight was on time. He bought a bottle of water and sat down, scrolling through messages on his phone. He was calm, relaxed, and completely unaware that his simple trip was about to turn into a global headline. The problem began with a young gate agent, a man who looked like he was barely out of his teens. He carried himself with an air of unearned authority, his uniform jacket a little too tight across his shoulders. When the call for first-class boarding began, Michael stood up and joined the short line. He was the third person to approach the counter. He handed over his ticket and his ID. The young agent scanned the ticket, and his computer beeped with a flat, negative sound. He scanned it again. Same beep. The agent sighed, a sound of pure annoyance, as if Michael's ticket was personally ruining his day. "Sorry, sir," he said without looking up from his screen. "This ticket isn't valid." Michael was sure there was a mistake. "I bought it last week," he said calmly. "Could you check the name again, please?" "Jordan." The agent typed with one finger, his eyes darting around the terminal, anywhere but at the passenger in front of him. "Nope, no record of that name in first class. There's a seat in coach with a similar name, but first class is completely full." Now Michael knew for a fact this wasn't true. He had booked his ticket through his personal travel agent, a woman who had never made a mistake in 20 years of service. He also knew the airline, a major carrier he had flown exclusively for years, had a corporate partnership with one of his own brands. He was one of their most valuable customers, even if he didn't advertise it. "Excuse me," Michael said, his voice still even. "I am certain I have a seat in first class, 2A to be exact. Could you please double-check? Perhaps call a supervisor?" The young agent finally looked up, a smirk on his face. "Sir, the computer says the class is full. The computer doesn't make mistakes. If you want to get on this flight, you can take the middle seat in row 38. Otherwise, you'll have to go to customer service and rebook." He gestured dismissively toward the main terminal. "Now, if you'll please step aside, you're holding up the line." The disrespect was stunning. It wasn't just the mistake on the ticket, it was the agent's attitude. The complete lack of care, the refusal to help, the enjoyment he seemed to take in telling someone no. Michael Jordan was not a man who was used to being told no, but more than that, he was a man who believed in respect. He had built his entire career, his entire empire, on a foundation of discipline, hard work, and mutual respect. What he was seeing in this young man was the complete opposite. He saw laziness, arrogance, and a deep-seated lack of professionalism. For a moment, he considered just walking away, taking the coach seat, and avoiding a scene, but then he looked at the other passengers in line, the elderly couple behind him, the young family with a baby. He thought about how this same agent would treat them if they had a problem. He realized this wasn't about him or his first-class seat. It was about a company that was allowing this kind of behavior to represent them. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," Michael said again, his voice now carrying a new firmness that made the agent pause. The smirk on the young man's face faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Fine," he muttered, picking up his phone, "but she's just going to tell you the same thing." What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that he wasn't just talking to another passenger. He was talking to a man who had built a billion-dollar brand from scratch, a man who understood the value of a customer better than the CEO of the airline itself. And that man had just decided that this simple ticketing error was a symptom of a much larger problem, a problem he was now uniquely positioned to solve. The next move wouldn't just stun the gate agent, it would send shockwaves through the entire aviation industry. Michael Jordan stood patiently to the side of the boarding line, his arms crossed over his chest. His calm demeanor was like the quiet surface of a deep ocean, hiding the powerful currents moving beneath. Other passengers were starting to stare. A few whispered and pointed, their phones coming out to sneak a picture. The young gate agent seemed to enjoy the attention, believing it validated his authority. He continued boarding the other first-class passengers with an exaggerated politeness, a clear performance for the growing audience. A woman in a crisp but slightly wrinkled uniform arrived a few minutes later. She was the supervisor. She didn't make eye contact with Michael at first, speaking only to the young agent. "What's the problem, Kevin? He's saying his ticket is for first class, but the system shows it's not," the agent said loudly. "I offered him a seat in coach, but he's demanding to speak with you." The supervisor finally turned to Michael, her expression already weary and defensive. "Sir, I understand you're having an issue with your ticket. As my colleague explained, our first-class cabin is fully booked. There's nothing I can do." Her tone was final. It was the voice of someone who had dealt with complaints all day and had no patience for one more. Michael looked at her name tag. "Sarah. Sarah," he began, his voice low and reasonable. "I am a partner with this airline. I have flown with you for over 20 years. My travel agent confirmed seat 2A this morning. There is clearly a mistake in your system. I'm just asking you to make a phone call to ticketing and sort it out." The supervisor, Sarah, actually rolled her eyes. "Sir, we are in the middle of boarding. We have a schedule to keep. I can't stop the entire process to make a phone call for one passenger's unconfirmed ticket. I can give you a voucher for your inconvenience, but you'll have to take the coach seat or wait for the next flight." This was the moment everything changed. The offer of a voucher was a corporate script, a meaningless gesture designed to make a problem go away without solving it. It was an insult. It told Michael that to this airline, to this supervisor, he was not a valued partner. He was not even a person. He was just an inconvenience. He saw the system for what it was, a rigid, uncaring machine that had forgotten the human beings it was supposed to serve. He saw the young agent, Kevin, smirking behind his supervisor's back. He saw the other passengers watching, some shaking their heads in sympathy, but all of them powerless. In that instant, Michael Jordan, the competitor, the champion, took over. He wasn't angry, he was focused, he understood the rules of this particular game, and he knew he had a move they had not anticipated. He simply nodded. "I see," he said. He didn't argue further, he didn't raise his voice, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The supervisor looked relieved, thinking he had finally given up. She turned back to the gate, ready to resume boarding. Kevin, the agent, let out a small, triumphant chuckle. Michael stepped away from the counter and walked over to a quiet spot by the window overlooking the tarmac. He scrolled through his contacts, his thumb moving with purpose. He passed the numbers for his wife, his kids, his celebrity friends. He went straight to his business contacts, to the core of his empire. He found the name he was looking for, David, the CEO of his own investment firm, the man who managed his vast portfolio of companies, partnerships and strategic alliances. He pressed the call button. The supervisor, Sarah, saw him on the phone and assumed he was complaining to a customer service hotline. She said to Kevin, "Let him waste his time. We have a plane to board." They had no idea that the call wasn't going to a low-level complaint department. It was going to the very top of the financial world. The call was answered on the first ring. David's voice was sharp and alert. "Mike, what's up? Everything okay?" "David, I'm at the airport," Michael said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. "I'm flying our preferred partner airline. I'm having a problem." David was instantly concerned. "What kind of problem? Did you lose your bag?" "No," Michael said. "It's a customer service problem. A complete breakdown in professionalism from the ground up." He explained the situation in a few concise sentences, not with emotion, but with the cool precision of a CEO reporting a critical failure in a supply chain. He finished by saying, "This is not the standard of excellence we associate our brands with. I want you to look into our partnership with this airline's parent company. All of our partnerships, the corporate travel accounts, the sponsorship deals, the equity stakes, everything. I want a full review on my desk by the end of the day. And David, I want you to communicate to them right now that all of our assets are being put on immediate hold pending that review." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Michael could picture David in his high-rise office, swiveling in his chair, his mind already processing the monumental implications of that request. He knew what on hold meant. It meant that a multi-hundred-million-dollar fire hose of revenue was about to be turned off. "Understood," David said, his voice now grim. "I'll make the call to their CEO myself. Consider it done." Michael hung up. The entire call had taken less than 90 seconds. He put his phone back in his pocket and returned to the gate area where the last of the economy passengers were now boarding. He stood there by the window and simply waited. The die was cast. He had made his move. Now, it was the airline's turn to play. The minutes after the phone call ticked by with an almost painful slowness. At the gate, the supervisor Sarah was focused on getting the flight out on time. She and Kevin worked in tandem, scanning the last few boarding passes and making final announcements. They pointedly ignored Michael, who remained still and silent by the window. To them, he was a resolved issue, a minor irritation that had passed. They were completely oblivious to the financial tsunami that was at that very moment racing across the globe, heading directly for their company's headquarters. The first sign of trouble was subtle. Sarah's personal cell phone, tucked away in her pocket, began to vibrate. She ignored it. Then the phone on the gate counter rang, a shrill, insistent sound. Kevin answered it, listened for a second, and his face went pale. "Sarah," he said, his voice a nervous whisper. "It's the operations center. They want to know why our system is showing a red flag on this flight." Before Sarah could respond, her own phone vibrated again, this time with a text message. She glanced at it. It was from the airport's general manager, a man she rarely heard from directly. The message was just 2 words, written in all caps, "Call me." A cold knot of dread began to form in her stomach. "What's going on?" she asked Kevin. He was staring at his computer screen, his earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by a look of pure panic. "I don't know," he stammered. "The entire system is freezing. I'm getting alerts from corporate security. My login isn't working anymore." Suddenly, a voice boomed over the airport's public address system, a voice that was far too calm for the message it delivered. "Attention, all passengers. Due to an unforeseen system-wide network failure, all flights for this airline are temporarily grounded. I repeat, all flights are grounded. Please wait for further instructions." A wave of confusion and frustration washed over the terminal. Passengers stopped in their tracks, looking around for answers. At Michael's gate, the few remaining passengers in the jet bridge were told to return to the waiting area. The flight door was closed. The plane was not going anywhere. Sarah was now shaking. This was a catastrophe, an airline's worst nightmare. A full system-wide grounding was something that happened only in cases of national security threats or catastrophic technical meltdowns. It cost millions of dollars every minute it lasted. She looked over at Michael Jordan, who hadn't moved. He was just watching the chaos unfold, his expression unreadable. And in that moment she knew. She knew with a terrifying certainty that this was not a coincidence. This was not a technical failure. This was him. Her phone rang again. It was the general manager, and he was screaming before she could even say hello. "What did you do?" he yelled, his voice cracking with fury. "What in God's name did you do at that gate?" I don't know what you're talking about," she managed to say. "He's at your gate right now, isn't he?" The general manager shouted, the big guy in the tracksuit. "Michael Jordan, is he there?" Sarah's blood ran cold. "Yes," she whispered, "he's here. The CEO of this entire airline just called me directly from an emergency board meeting." The manager's voice was now a strangled gasp. "He told me that our single largest corporate partner, a partner worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year to us, has just frozen all of their accounts. They are threatening to pull every dollar they have with us, and they said it was because of a catastrophic failure in customer service experienced by their primary stakeholder. And that primary stakeholder is standing 10 feet away from you." The phone felt like a block of ice in Sarah's hand. She looked at Kevin, who looked like he was about to be sick. He had heard every word. Her eyes then went to Michael. He met her gaze, and for the first time she saw the immense, unshakable power behind his calm exterior. It was the same look of focus and determination he had before taking a championship-winning shot. She realized she hadn't just been rude to a passenger, she had insulted an institution. "You need to fix this," the general manager was now pleading. "Fix it now. Apologize. Give him whatever he wants. Give him the entire plane. Just make him call it off." Sarah hung up the phone. Her legs felt weak. She took a stumbling step toward Michael, her carefully constructed authority completely shattered. "Mr. Jordan," she began, her voice trembling. "Sir, I am so sorry. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. We have a seat for you. Of course we have a seat." She looked desperately at Kevin, who was frantically typing at his now working computer. "Right, Kevin. Seat 2A is open. It was a system glitch, a stupid glitch. We are so sorry for the confusion." Kevin nodded vigorously, not daring to speak. Michael listened to her panicked apology without a word. He didn't look angry. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked disappointed. He let the silence hang in the air, a silence that was more powerful than any shouting could ever be. He knew the chaos was just beginning. The groveling had started, but the lesson was far from over. The scene at gate C12 had transformed from a routine boarding process into the frantic nerve center of a corporate crisis. Sarah, the supervisor, stood before Michael Jordan, her face a mask of desperate apology. Kevin, the young agent who had started it all, was hiding behind his computer, trying to make himself as small as possible. The grounding announcement had sent a shockwave of panic through the entire airport, but here, at the epicenter, the air was thick with a unique kind of terror, the terror of having made a career-ending mistake. Michael let Sarah's apology hang in the air for a long moment before he finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the surrounding noise of the terminal. "A misunderstanding?" he asked. "It seemed very clear to me. Your employee told me the flight was full, and you told me to take a voucher. You said you couldn't be bothered to make a single phone call. I was wrong," Sarah stammered. "It was a stressful morning. I wasn't thinking clearly. It was unprofessional, and there is no excuse. Please, Mr. Jordan, tell us what we can do to fix this. We will do anything." Before Michael could respond, a new group of people came rushing toward the gate. It was the airport's general manager, flanked by two other men in expensive suits, who were clearly high-level executives from the airline's corporate office. They had run all the way from the administrative wing of the airport. The general manager, a man named Henderson, was red-faced and out of breath. "Mr. Jordan," he called out as he approached, "I'm Bill Henderson. I am so deeply sorry for the treatment you received from my staff. It is unacceptable and does not represent our company's values." The two executives with him echoed his apologies, their voices overlapping in their haste to show remorse. They introduced themselves as the Vice President of North American Operations and the Head of Customer Experience. They had been in a meeting nearby when the call came from the CEO. They looked at Michael Jordan not as a passenger, but as a walking, breathing financial cataclysm that they had to somehow contain. Michael simply looked at the three men, three executives, running through an airport to apologize for one rude gate agent. "What do you think you should do?" Michael asked them, turning the question back on them. Henderson didn't hesitate. "First, these two employees are being placed on immediate and indefinite leave pending a full investigation." He gestured toward Sarah and Kevin, who both visibly flinched as if struck. "Second, we have a private jet on standby waiting to take you to your destination whenever you are ready. No waiting, no other passengers, it's all yours. And third, we would like to offer you a lifetime membership in our highest tier Platinum Club with our sincerest apologies." Michael listened to the offers, his expression unchanged. A private jet, a lifetime membership, firing the employees. These were the standard corporate responses to a massive problem. Throw money at it and remove the immediate cause. But they were still missing the point. It was never about the private jet, he said calmly. "I had a ticket for a commercial flight. It was never about a lifetime membership. I was already a loyal customer. And it's not about these two employees. They are a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself." The executives looked confused. The problem, Michael continued, his voice rising slightly, gaining a new level of authority, is your culture. You have a culture where a young employee feels powerful by saying no, instead of by finding a way to say yes. You have a culture where a supervisor's first instinct is to dismiss a customer rather than to listen to them. You have a culture that has forgotten that your entire business, every plane, every gate, every salary, is paid for by the people you are treating like an inconvenience. He paused, letting his words sink in. He looked directly at Henderson. What happens when the person you treat this way isn't me? What happens to the grandmother who saved up all year for a ticket to see her grandkids? What happens to the young soldier trying to get home on leave? Do you run through the airport for them? Do you offer them a private jet? Or do you just hand them a useless voucher and tell them to get out of line? The silence that followed was heavy and complete. The executives had no answer. In that moment, Michael Jordan had stripped away all the corporate jargon and exposed the simple, ugly truth. He had turned his personal slight into a powerful indictment of the entire company. He had become the voice for every single customer who had ever been treated poorly, every person who had ever been made to feel small and powerless by a large corporation. "I don't want your private jet," he said. "I want you to fix your company." A young woman who had been watching the whole ordeal from a few feet away, her phone recording everything, spoke up. "He's right," she said. "Last month, this airline lost my father's ashes and then tried to charge me a fee to look for them." Another man chimed in. "They cancelled my flight and refused to give me a refund, stranding my family for 2 days." Suddenly, a small crowd of passengers had gathered, all with their own stories of poor treatment at the hands of the airline. The executives looked horrified. Their contained crisis was turning into a public relations disaster, live from the terminal floor. Henderson, the general manager, finally understood. "You're right, Mr. Jordan," he said, his voice now filled with genuine shame. "You are absolutely right. We have failed. Please, just tell us what you want." Michael looked at the crowd of angry passengers, then back at the executives. He pulled out his phone again. He didn't make a call this time, he just held it up. "The first thing you're going to do," he said, "is you're going to lift the grounding. These people deserve to get where they are going. The second thing you're going to do is personally apologize to every single person on this flight and upgrade them, all of them. And the third thing you're going to do," he said, his eyes locking with the VP of Operations, "is you're going to sit down with me next week and you're going to present a real, actionable plan for how you intend to change the culture of this company. If I'm satisfied with that plan, my business partner will take your company off hold. If not, we will take our business and the business of all our partners elsewhere, permanently." The executive nodded quickly, his face pale. "Yes, sir. Of course, Mr. Jordan, we will." Only then did Michael put his phone away. Satisfied that the lesson was finally beginning to be learned, he turned to the gate. "Now," he said, "I believe you have a plane for me to catch. Seat 2A." The executive scrambled to obey. The general manager himself took Michael's boarding pass, scanned it, and handed it back as if it were a sacred object. "Mr. Jordan, your seat is ready. Welcome aboard." The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath as Michael Jordan walked down the jet bridge. The chaos he had unleashed with a single 90-second phone call was far from over, but his part in it was done. The corporate executives were left behind, surrounded by angry passengers and the dawning horror of the work that lay ahead of them. They had to fix a broken airline, and more importantly, they had to fix a broken culture of respect. The first step was the immediate ungrounding of all flights. Frantic calls were made from the gate, and within 20 minutes, the public address system announced that the network failure had been resolved. A collective sigh of relief went through the airport. The airline's operations began to slowly creak back to life, but the damage was already done. The stock price of the airline's parent company had taken a noticeable dip in pre-market trading, a direct result of the rumor that a major corporate partner was pulling out. News outlets were already picking up on the story, with headlines like "Mystery Glitch Grounds Major Airline" beginning to appear online. Back at Gate C12, the executives followed Michael's instructions to the letter. They announced that every passenger on the delayed flight would receive a full refund, a voucher for a future flight, and a complimentary upgrade if available. They then went person by person, offering sincere apologies for the delay. The atmosphere at the gate shifted from anger and confusion to disbelief and gratitude. The passengers knew exactly who to thank. As Michael settled into seat 2A, the same seat he had been denied just an hour earlier, the other first-class passengers gave him a quiet round of applause. A businessman sitting across the aisle leaned over. "I've been flying this airline for 30 years and I've never seen anything like that," he said. "Thank you." Michael simply nodded. He didn't want thanks or praise. He had acted on principle, and the results had been more dramatic than even he had anticipated. He looked out the window as the plane finally pushed back from the gate. He saw Sarah, the supervisor, and Kevin, the young agent, being quietly escorted away by airport security. He felt no satisfaction in seeing them lose their jobs. He saw them as casualties of a broken system, a system that encouraged and rewarded the wrong kind of behavior. He hoped this incident would be a wake-up call, not just for them, but for the entire company. The flight itself was uneventful. The flight attendants treated him with an almost reverential respect, but he asked for nothing more than a bottle of water. He spent the flight looking over documents for his charity tournament, his mind already moving on to the next challenge, but the world he was flying over was still buzzing from the events he had set in motion. In the airline's boardroom, an emergency meeting was in full swing. The CEO was furious, not at Michael Jordan, but at his own company's failings. He had seen the cell phone videos that were already going viral. He had read the reports from the airport. He knew that this was a self-inflicted wound of the worst kind. "We didn't just disrespect a passenger," he told his board. "We disrespected a partner. We disrespected a global icon. But worse than that, we showed the world that we have forgotten how to treat people." He ordered the creation of a special task force led by the Vice President of Operations, with the sole purpose of developing the plan Michael Jordan had demanded. The plan had to be real, it had to be deep, and it had to be ready in 1 week. The company's survival depended on it. When Michael landed, his phone was flooded with messages from reporters, business associates and friends, all asking about the incident. He ignored them all. He had not done this for publicity. He released a short, simple statement through his spokesperson. "Today, a customer service issue was resolved." That was all he said. But the story took on a life of its own. It became a modern-day legend, a cautionary tale for corporations everywhere. The story of how one man's refusal to be disrespected brought an entire airline to its knees. It was a story about the hidden power that customers hold and the immense power that comes from a lifetime of building respect and a reputation for excellence. A week later, Michael Jordan sat in his own boardroom. Across the table sat the airline's CEO and the team from the Special Task Force. They looked tired but focused. They presented their plan. It was called the Altitude of Attitude. It was a complete overhaul of their customer service training from the ground up. It included new hiring protocols that screened for empathy and problem-solving skills. It empowered employees at all levels to fix customer problems on the spot, giving them budgets and authority to do so. It implemented a new customer-first metric that would be tied to every employee's performance reviews and bonuses, from the gate agents to the CEO himself. It was a detailed, expensive, and radical plan. Michael listened intently, asking sharp questions and challenging their assumptions. After an hour, he leaned back in his chair. He looked at the CEO. "This is a good start," he said. "But a plan is just words on paper. The real test is in the execution." The CEO nodded. "We know, and we are committed to it. We've already started. Your friend Sarah, the supervisor, she wasn't fired. She's the first person enrolled in our new leadership and empathy training program. We believe people can learn and grow. We're giving her a second chance." Michael was surprised and impressed. It was a move that showed genuine commitment to change, not just punishment. He stood up and extended his hand. "All right," he said. "You have your second chance. My team will be in touch to reactivate our accounts." The CEO shook his hand, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, Mr. Jordan. You have taught us a valuable lesson." Michael walked with them to the door. "Just remember," he said as they left, "you're not just flying planes, you're carrying people's lives, their hopes, their plans. It's a position of trust. Never disrespect that." The airline did change. The Altitude of Attitude program became a model for the industry. Slowly, over time, the airline rebuilt its reputation, not just as a carrier, but as a company that cared. And it all started that Tuesday morning, at a crowded gate, when one employee failed to realize that the man he was disrespecting had the power to change the world, or at the very least, the power to change an airline. The story of Michael Jordan and the airline became a lesson taught in business schools, a legend whispered in airport lounges. It served as a powerful reminder that respect is the most valuable currency in the world, and that sometimes the most important battles are not fought on a basketball court, but at a customer service counter. It showed that one person standing up for what is right can force even the largest giants to bend, and it all started with a simple request, a refusal to be dismissed, and a single, world-changing phone call. If this story of principle and power moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what part of this journey shocked you the most. For another story about a legend taking a stand that will leave you speechless, click the video on your screen now. You won't believe what happens next.